Hello there, everybody, and welcome once again to Harrah's Hoosier Park as we will be previewing the Preakness, the 148th renewal of the race at Old Hilltop, the middle jewel of the Triple Crown. Michael Chamberlain here with Rick Moore and Jacob Reinheimer. We went from a fearsome foursome. Hopefully we're not going to be the Three Stooges today as we give out our picks for the Preakness. And we were talking, coming into doing this assessment of the race. The only horse to come back from the Derby to race in the Preakness here is the Derby winner, Mage.
I don't think you could find many excuses for others in the Derby. Two Phils deserves time off after the effort he put in.
Yes.
And Angel of Empire, nice third, but after that, you're hard pressed to.
You think about it. There's 23 horses that entered in that race, and 5 of them scratched beforehand for whatever reason, but 22 trainers or the connections of 22 horses decided not to come back 2 weeks later. I don't find that very reassuring.
And there's somebody, I'll let you speak in just a second, Jay, but I just thought so many of those horses got so burned up in that first half mile that I think they probably need some time to recover after that hectic pace.
Yeah,
Jacob?
Well, yeah, but the good news is, fortunately, the one that did come back from the Derby is the one we wanted to come back, that being Mage, unlike last year, of course, having Rich Strike and that skipped the Preakness. With that said, it is really hard, and it does hurt the Preakness a little bit, just relatively speaking. We get to know those 20 Derby horses so much. We're following them all winter long, and then just for none of them to be here, that's a tough spot. With that said, we're going to meet some new faces here in the Preakness and maybe find another star.
Yes, absolutely. As we say that we've got a field of 8. They're going to go 1 mile and 3/16. The same distance as the Louisiana Derby, which we had pointed out in some of our preview discussions as well. There are some horses that were on the Triple Crown Trail that are not unfamiliar with this distance. And, I have to say, just looking at this field, I think you've got a definite bunch of haves and have-nots, as you have Mage, the 8-5 morning line favorite, first mission, second choice at 5-2. National Treasure, the Bob Baffert trainee, in here at 4-1, and then 6-1 on Blazing Sevens. Really, the only other one that is 10-1 or less is Red Route 1, who is a horse that came out of the Arkansas route to the Derby and didn't qualify for the Derby, but is in this race here. So you've got, I think, the haves and the have-nots, even in kind of a smaller field.
Well, let's talk about the glass being half full, not half empty. To Jacob's point, we have the Derby winner in this race. Last year, that was a tough sell, the Preakness without the Derby winner, right? I mean, it just you talk about letting the air out of the balloon. The Derby winner doesn't go in the Preakness.
Well, think about this: they were on the fence until Friday when they felt the horse. They assessed the horse and he came out of the Derby in good shape. But they were on the fence until Friday. Can you imagine if he was not in this race? I mean, what we'd be looking at here. I mean, it's as you say, it was a tough sell last year. I think this would be kind of I've got a bridge in Brooklyn for you if you kind of a sell. But
the good news is we do have the Derby winner.
Yes, the Derby winner is here, so we are still live for the Triple Crown this year as we take a look at these horses. And we'll start with the Derby winner, obviously with Mage, Javier Castellano coming back to ride. One of 3 horses by Good Magic in this field. Mage is by Good Magic, as is Perform and Blazing Sevens. So you've got a high-quality sire because he's, obviously now produced a classic winner. And, Mage ran a huge race in the Derby. And one thing I do want to point out in assessing this race, and you referred to it in our comments about some of the horses getting burned out after the Derby with the pace, is I don't necessarily see the similar pace set up here for Mage to run into.
I agree with that because you typically you get it in the Derby. I think that everyone's nerves are so tight. I mean, I just think when they come out of that gate, everyone with that 20-horse field, usually 20-horse field, everyone is so I have to get position. Right. And now you've gunned your horse. So there's no these are horses. You ask this horse to go. And a lot of them went. They went 45 and change. So
yes.
Typically you don't get the same size field ever. You only 14 max, but you don't get the same pace in the Preakness. To your point, I agree with you on that.
I think that I don't want to say that but I think it may actually hinder his chances in this race. Because if he doesn't have something to run at, you could say somebody could go out and maybe just kind of leisurely gallop along, and kind of what early voting did last year when he took the Preakness on the front.
Well, that is kind of what I will say. The speed horses that are in this race, I do feel like are kind of outsiders for the most part, outside of maybe National Treasure. I think he's the one that a lot of people have their eyes on. If he can get out front and get kind of an easy pace, he's the one who could kind of steal it. But other than that, you're looking at like Coffee with Chris, Perform, Chase the Chaos. They're kind of the speed horses in this race, and I don't really know if they're Preakness caliber horses. They just might be the ones setting the tone early.
Yeah, I mean, Coffee with Chris is basically a Maryland, Virginia circuit horse. Chase the Chaos, the one race that he had on a main dirt track surface, he finished 7th in the Grade 2 San Felipe. I do think that First Mission could get well positioned in behind any potential pace that sets up. Getting the outside post for him might actually be a blessing in that regard, because let's say National Treasure goes from that inside post and someone goes with him. Mm-hmm. If First Mission can get a secure spot 3rd or 4th right in behind that and in the clear on the outside, he could get the Garden Trip.
He could, but let me say this about Mage. 4 races, he's only been beat by 1 horse, and that's Forte.
That's true.
Forte has never been beat. He was going to be the favorite in the Derby. Mage almost beat him in the Florida Derby. There's until proven otherwise, I think Mage is the real deal.
Right. And I think you have to take the Fountain of Youth out of Mage's equation, because he slammed into the gate in that race, and he never really had much of a shot there, and he still finished 4th.
Yeah, and if I could say one thing about that on the Fountain of Youth, because I watched that race closely, he had a horrible trip.
Yeah.
He was wide the entire way in the Fountain of Youth. You saw that too, right, Jacob? He had a really tough trip, so I thought he had to build an excuse there.
Well, that's kind of the thing with Mage. We're all still kind of a little uncertain to what exactly Mage is. He only has the 4 starts. He's done absolutely nothing wrong in those 4 starts. Mm-hmm. It's such a small sample size. Is he this kind of generational horse where he can go from the Derby to the Preakness, or was that Derby just kind of set up for him? This Preakness is going to be kind of a little bit of a prove-it race for Mage.
Right, and I think it does also the same for First Mission, because First Mission only has 3 starts coming in. It took him 2 times to break the maiden. He did that at the fairgrounds, going 1 mile and 1/16. The first start at 6 furlongs. I'll say that was a little short for him by Street Sense out of a Medaglia d'Oro mare, so he needed the distance. Got it the second time out and won convincingly by almost 7 lengths. And then he won the Lexington, running down Arabian Lion, and he beat Disarm in that race, who finished 4th in the Kentucky Derby. And I have to say, I was very impressed with that performance in the Lexington from First Mission, so much so that when he did cross the line there, I was saying, boy, I hope this horse comes back in the Preakness.
Well, he's coming back in the Preakness.
Yeah.
And, I mentioned when we were handicapping the Derby that I didn't like the California horses and the New York horses. I was right on that.
Yes.
The horses I do like, I did mention, more and more, the horses that travel through Oaklawn Park, Arkansas, I think are really kind of distinguishing themselves. And I think Red Route 1 is going to be a horse you're going to hear from in this race. I know he's got the most starts of any horse in this race, but I like this horse. I think he's going to be making a big move in the stretch.
Well, and I think he may... The one a knock against him now, I think, is the same thing I said about Mage. He's got to have the pace to close into. But I think you're right. I think he's going to come running late on the scene. If he doesn't get a 45 and change or a really fast opening half mile, it could make it a little more challenging for him.
No, I'm with Rick on this, too. I'm incredibly high on Red Route 1. The only concern was his tactics. He likes to come from last. That's really, and that got him in trouble a little bit in the Arkansas Derby, and that's his own doing, right? That's just his running style.
Yes.
I didn't think that was a bad effort, though, and I loved his effort in the Rebel Stakes. And I love the horses that he was racing against. Confidence Game, Angel of Empire. He's probably the most well-tested outside of Mage coming into this Preakness.
Just look at his – don't even look at last year. Just look at his 4 races this year. There's not a bad race there. This horse has run – honest, all 4 races this year. He's been very, very sharp.
Yes, no, that is the case. A couple of seconds in graded stakes, finishing behind Arabian Night and Confidence Game in the Southwest and the Rebel, respectively. And then he did win an ungraded stake at Oaklawn at 1 mile and 1/8. And again, you look at the breeding of this horse. By Gun Runner out of a Tappet mare.
Wow,
that's pretty stout.
That's pretty good. What do you guys think of Baffert's horse?
I like National Treasure in this race in as much as they're adding blinkers here, which I think is an interesting move. He's by Quality Road out of a Medaglia d'Oro mare, so obviously, a $500,000 purchase. I think that if he goes to the front and no one goes with him, he wires the field. If he goes to the front and he gets a challenge from, say, Coffee with Chris or First Mission, I think it makes it a little more difficult for him. And I'm kind of anticipating that happening, where I think you're going to see a couple of horses get out there and kind of try to steal it up front.
Well, and that's kind of my concern. I went back and I watched that Santa Anita Derby, and he got in traffic around the far turn, and he just seems so unwilling to pass horses. I'm with you. I think if he gets out front, kind of gets it his way, he could absolutely steal it. Once he gets behind horses, he just kind of shuts down a little bit. I just didn't love those two efforts at Santa Anita.
Well, this is a Bob Baffert horse on the rail, and Bob Baffert, we know, likes to send his horses in the classics. They're going to send this horse from the rail. They got to. They'd be crazy not to. They got the advantage.
No choice. They have no choice.
I mean, you'd be crazy not to. You got the advantage of the rail. You got a horse that's got legitimate speed. Doesn't have to be on top. So they're going to send this horse, whether he's first or second. I think it'd be 1-2 going into the first turn.
And let's not forget, he did finish third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, going back to Keeneland last fall behind Forte and Cave Rock. And Cave Rock was the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, has been out of the pictures pretty much since that race. As I say, Johnny Velasquez riding for Bob Baffert. We talk about the equine connections. That's a pretty good set of human connections too.
That's a Hall of Fame connections right there.
Exactly.
Yep.
I think that a horse that it could be a little bit under the radar coming in here also is Blazing Sevens. With Irad Ortiz Jr. up for Chad Brown. This is one of the good Magic horses that I referenced. He ran third in the Bluegrass behind Tappet, Trice, and Verifying. Now, we sat here 2 weeks ago, and a couple of us picked Tappet, Trice, and a couple of us also liked Verifying. So I think if we're going to like those two horses, and, granted, Verifying got caught up in the pace, and Tappet Trice, never really got going in the Derby a couple of weeks ago. But, I mean, if we like those two horses 2 weeks ago, I think we've got to make a case for Blazing Sevens, too. I
agree with you. We all know Keeneland is a speed favoring track, right? You got to be very, very close at Keeneland. This horse was, it was, eighth at the first call. So, he was not that close, and he did make up ground in that race. So I don't disagree with you at all there.
Yeah, so he's another one that raced in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile against Alexa Forte. Finished fourth in there, no shame in that. Came back in the Fountain of Youth, got bumped out of the gate. Can maybe draw a line through that, and then the effort in the Bluegrass was definitely a step forward. So he has absolutely one that could be poised, especially with trainer Chad Brown.
Yeah, I think that you've got a lot of different ways you could go in this race, which is interesting as I say that, because we're sitting here saying, oh, it's such a bad race because there's nobody else from the Derby in here except for the winner, and yet we're sitting here trying to make cases for these horses, and we're actually, kind of selling these horses saying, well, this one could win, this one could win, this one. I think that we're kind of, I don't want to say selling the race, but I think that, we're making a pretty good argument that it's not as much of a fait accompli as we think it is.
Well, we know it's going to be huge pools, right? It's the Preakness. It's going to be huge pools. So there's value to be had here, whether it's, exactas, trifectas, superfectas. I mean, there's going to be value here because, like we said, we're making cases for all these horses. Yep. Even with 8 horses, you can't usually use all of them. I mean, I know I can't.
No.
So
well, I think the one horse that kind of is just in here as a filler is Chase the Chaos. This one is 50-1 on the board on the morning line. I applaud the connections for being in here. I mean, the winner of the El Camino Real Derby, so does have a stakes win this year. But really nothing else really stands out from this horse, going from Canterbury to Golden Gate to that one race at Santa Anita. I understand why this horse is 50-1 in an 8-horse race, but I think it could just as easily been a 7-horse field.
Yeah, and the one time he really did take on those top caliber horses was in the San Felipe, where he raced against Lex Practical Move, and he was just never a factor really in that race. Finished a distant 7th. He is the one where you just kind of drew a line through him pretty much.
Yeah, I said I didn't like the California horses. This horse was in the San Felipe, was 31-1 and got beat about a pole. And I can't see any way of making any case for this horse.
So now that we've said that, you should probably go put $5 on him to win, because I'm sure he'll come through at 50-1. But let's go ahead and put the picks up, and we'll take a look at what we have here as far as the Preakness is concerned. And Jacob and I are on first mission, and Rick is going with the Derby winner Mage, and you have Red Route 1 second, which he's 10-1, and I'm wondering about. I'm guessing he might be the horse that actually comes down a little bit in the betting, because I'm going to bet you probably get 5 or 6-1 on him at best.
I think he is going to be the one that's coming down, because I think people do like the horses that are coming out of Oaklawn and Arkansas, and Jacob and I both have Red Route 1 second on our ticket. I did go with Mage. Until someone beats him, other than Forte, he's going to be my top choice.
Yeah, and he's the one for me where, you can poke a hole in any one of these horses. I know we've kind of been talking about that. The only hole I really have to poke at him is his tactics. It's that you expect him to come from last, and you're just worried about the pace setup in this race. But I love the competition he's raced against. Second in the Rebel, coming out of those Arkansas races, I really think you can make a case for Red Route 1.
But if he does win, you're gonna have to hold to that in 3 weeks when we do the Belmont video too. Now here's the thing. The reason I picked First Mission is what I was saying earlier about the pace. I think that if someone, and National Treasure and somebody else goes, say a Coffee with Chris, and you get a 2-horse battle setting up, First Mission I think is going to just get the absolute garden trip in this race. And you've got a rider like Luis Saez, who certainly knows what he's doing, and he's up for Brad Cox, who's winning at 28% this year. I think First Mission, I was really impressed with the win in the Lexington, as I said, and I think he's just going to set the perfect trip. And I think what's going to happen is that Mage is going to make his run, but I think he's going to be able to get to the wire before Mage gets to him.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you. I just love that race in the Lexington. The lack of experience would typically concern me. I know I got burned pretty hard by Kingsbarns in the Kentucky Derby. He was my pick there. Similar story there, very lack of experience. With that said, I think in this race, we talk about it, just a field of 8. He's on the far outside, and not completely sure about the competition he's going against. So I'd argue that Lexington's not too far off from what he's facing here in the Preakness, racing against Arabian Lion. So I think from the 8-hole, as I said, that can actually use that to his advantage, get the trip, and get the jump on Mage. That's why I went First Mission as well.
I got to go back to Mage. I do not think Mage is one of those true come from behind, 20 lengths back type horses. I think this horse has enough tactical speed that he can be close to the pace. I really do. I think the jockey, Javier Castellano, a wise old head, I think he saw that pace that was that was taking place in the Derby and thought, well, I got plenty of time to get there with the way these guys are going out on the front end. So
yeah, that's true. And we certainly can't sell Castellano's ride short. That was his first Derby win in 16 tries, and he earned it with a really great tactical performance in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, it just worked out perfect where he got by, with 2 fills. He was right on that pace. He was maybe a little tired in the stretch, and he got the jump on Angel of Empire, who just had too much work to do in the stretch. So he's just in the perfect spot to get the job done.
And one thing about Mage, he is not a grinder. Mm-hmm. He has that burst of speed. When they use, he's not a grinder. He's not one of those. He passes one horse and then he passes another. He makes a big move.
Well,
when they ask him to move.
Let's go back to the Florida Derby on that point, because in the Florida Derby, Mage made the first move.
Big move.
And Forte passed him, and that was a huge move going around the far turn down there at Gulfstream. Because on the far turn, I thought Mage was the winner of the Florida Derby, and Forte just ran a great race to get by him. And, so I to that point, I do see where you're coming from with that. If Mage makes that similar move, then he's going to be tough to beat on Saturday.
He's got that burst of speed, that 1/8 of a mile where they can carry that speed past the competition. It's kind of like what Angel of Empire did in the Arkansas Derby, if you remember that big move he made.
Yes.
Those are not typical come-behind plotters or grinders. Those are horses that make that big move and try to get the jump on the competition and hope that they can hold the rest of them off.
I really do think this sets up for our best chance in recent years to get to Belmont with a chance for a Triple Crown since Justify. Because just the caliber of the field that the Preakness drew this year and what Mage could possibly be, with how impressive he was in that Kentucky Derby, I do think he's the logical favorite in here, and I just really tried to go against him more purely from value.
Well, and I will say, if he does win this race, come 3 weeks from now in the Belmont, I am guaranteeing you I'm looking for someone to beat him. Because there's going to be a bigger field, I think, in the Belmont, and I think a lot of those Derby horses are coming back 5 weeks after the Derby, because then they'll have their time off, and that might be the day for Tapit Trice.
There'll be some fresh shooters and some new shooters in the Belmont. That's for sure.
That's going to be I think if he gets to New York with a shot to do it, if Rick is correct and he does win, then I think we've got a really nice gambling race coming up in 3 weeks.
Yes.
Who else? You know, we talked about, you know, we don't chase the chaos. We kind of put the line through him. We talked about Blazing Sevens. Performed.
We've kind of glossed over Perform a little bit here. You know, the Shug
any-
McGahee horse.
Any shot there?
You know, he won the Tessio at Laurel, which you know is kind of an automatic bid to get into the Preakness. And I'm trying to think of the last horse to win the Tessio and then come back and win the Preakness. I remember Magic Wisner was I think he won the Tessio and then ran second to War Emblem, coming back in 2002. 21 years ago. But as far as any of the other, you know, Tessio winners that do come in and run in the Preakness, I haven't seen, you know, that be a real big factor of late.
Yeah, you know, I just couldn't quite get there with him. He has one where it took him 5 starts to get that first win. He got it and made in special weight down in Tampa, 2-back. Comes back, wins the Tessio, as I said. So maybe he's coming into his own a little bit. Just the competition, the speed figures that he's putting up, I just couldn't quite get there with Perform.
Yeah, the speed figures for me were the thing because he just doesn't seem as fast as the rest of these horses.
Let me say this. I watched this horse in the Tessio. I watched it live and I watched the replay of it. He saved every inch of ground. He never got off the rail. It didn't get off the rail until about the last 50 yards where we pulled out to go by the horse that finished second. So he had an amazingly great trip. You know, I'm one of those guys that you usually don't get 2 great trips in a row, especially in races like this.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You don't get that garden spot a couple of times. You know, that's a very good point. So now, as we're looking at the numbers here, you know, we've got a lot of similar selections. You know, I did include the 7 Blazing Sevens. As I said, just based on what he was going up against, I think he could, be a part of it or trundle up for a little bit of it underneath. So I mean, let's say we each have $20 to just make a mythical wager on this race. What are you going to do?
Well, I'm probably going to put Mage on top and put him second. I won't put him any further down than that, and use the other and probably use the other 3 horses that I've got. And I would also throw in your Blazing Sevens because I do believe he's got a shot to hit the board. At least get up for 3rd or 4th. I don't see him winning it, but I do see him being able to hit the board. So I would throw him in also. So I would have National Treasure with Mage on top, with Red Route 1, First Mission, and I would throw Blazing Sevens on there.
Okay.
Yeah, I would throw some money down on Red Route 1 to get the win, especially if you could get around that 10-1 morning line price. I don't think we will, as we said. I think his price will come down a little bit. I'd use probably $10 of that. Other than that, then I'd do some boxes with him, Mage, and then First Mission, as we've been talking about. Those are really the 3 I landed on as the only 3 that I really thought had a shot to win this.
I see. I'm just going to put all my $20 on First Mission. I'm just going to place a win bet on him to take it, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Because I just as far as with. I've got favorites. I think the highest price I have on that board of 4 horses is 6-1. So I mean, there's really not a ton of value there. So I'm just going to take my $20, say 20 to win on First Mission, and just commit the whole bundle.
So we always ask ourselves, who do you think will be the it horse or the wise guy horse or the horse that gets bet down? You mentioned it already. I do think Red Route 1 is that horse in this race that's going to be bet down. Do you guys agree?
I don't think 10-1 happens. I just can't see that.
You're going to get single digits around that 5-1.
Yeah, I think 5 or 6. I mean, if it really gets crazy, he could even go off 9-2.
Yeah,
I mean, I could see him getting hit that much. Especially we also have to consider. We have to see how the track plays on Saturday. Mm-hmm. If it's pretty speed favoring track, that could take some people off of Mage. It could take some people off of Red Route 1 because these deep closers that may not be able to get there. That could alter a lot of people's thinking too.
The races I've watched from Pimlico, and I'm not going to say I've watched every race from Pimlico. I haven't, but I did watch some races over the weekend. That track seemed pretty fair, seemed pretty even. Horses were out front, horses were coming from behind. I mean, it seemed like a pretty fair racetrack.
Excellent. Well, we hopefully will have that on Saturday, and of course, we're coming back in 3 weeks with the Belmont, and as if Rick is correct, we will have a shot at a Triple Crown, which we haven't had since 2018 when Justify got all 3 of them, and so it's only been a 5-year drought. It's not like the 37 years between Affirmed and American Pharaoh, but it would certainly add a lot of interest if Mage were to be able to come through.
We got kind of spoiled, and I went back and looked at this because growing up, it felt like every other year we had a Triple Crown shot. So I went back and looked, and from 97 to 2018, 21 years, we had 11 shots going into
that
the
many,
Belmont
huh? Wow.
for a Triple Crown. And then even like years where we didn't have, like Street Sense just got nosed out in the Preakness. Mind That Bird was second in the Preakness. Animal Kingdom was second in the Preakness. Like we kind of got spoiled there for a long time. and going into Belmont with some Triple Crown chances. In these last few years, I think the Kentucky Derby's been so wonky. We talked about it coming into this year, where we just wanted a normal Kentucky Derby, and really 15-1 on Mage was the most normal we've had in a while for the Kentucky Derby.
Very
so
true.
It just hasn't really set up for those Triple Crown bits, but I do think this is our best shot in a while to get that chance.
But it makes it makes Belmont Day so much more exciting and fun. You see that
Yes.
crowd in New York on Belmont Day. I mean, it just makes it for our sport, for our industry. And when I say that, I'm talking about standardbred racing. I'm talking about quarter horse racing, thoroughbred. It makes it puts us on center stage again, right? And I love it when everyone's watching horse racing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If Mage does get the job done on Saturday, I can guarantee you, come 3 weeks from now, we're going to be busy here at Harrah's Hoosier Park, and I know that every racetrack across the country and every place where you can get a wager in will be hopping for sure. So that's our look at the 148th running of the Preakness. Rick once again is looking for a Triple Crown bid with Mage winning. Jacob and I going with First Mission to pull off a minor upset. He's 5-2. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a big upset there, but it's a mile and 3/16. It's the middle jewel of the Triple Crown. They're at Old Hilltop in Baltimore, and I think it's going to be an exciting race one way or the other. Do we have any final points before we wrap it up?
No, I think I said everything I've got to say. I do think it's Mage's race. I mean, I know you guys are going against him, but I'm sold on this horse. Like I said, the only horse that has beat him is Forte, and gosh, it would be nice to see him and Forte square off again, won't it?
They could come back at the Belmont.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
How exciting would that make the Belmont? Huh?
Yeah, if Forte could get in it, that would be something.
Wouldn't that be something? Wow.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Rick. I think I said my piece on the Preakness. With that said, we got a lot going on here at Hoosier Park. As we do for all the Triple Crown races, we're going to have mega bets, that progressive pick'em drawing. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to show the races all night or all day long here from Pimlico here at Hoosier Park. We're going to have a little bit later post time, I think 7:20 for our post time on Saturday. So just looking forward to the day in general. And as Rick said, hopefully we get that Triple Crown bid.
We certainly are hoping that is the way that it goes. For Jacob Reinheimer and Rick Moore, I'm Michael Chamberlain, wishing the best of luck to you all.